In part 1, we followed the wristwatch from a jeweled bracelet for a queen in 1810 through the trenches of World War I to the summit of Mount Everest. Now in part 2, we enter the most dramatic era in watchmaking, moonwalks and motorsport. A technological revolution that nearly wiped Swiss watchmaking off the map, and a comeback nobody saw coming. After World War II, wristwatches were no longer just accessories. They were professional instruments. Dive watches went deeper. Pilot watches flew higher. And chronographs, watches with built-in stopwatch functions, became essential for racing. The concept was not new. Louis Moinet had invented the first chronograph as far back as 1816 to track stars. But by the mid-20th century, these mechanical calculators were being perfected for the wrist. In 1957, Omega released the Speedmaster, originally designed for motor racing. But its destiny lay far beyond any racetrack. In the early 1960s, NASA needed a reliable wristwatch for its astronauts. James Reagan, the NASA engineer in charge of testing flight hardware, shared the story in Matt Hronek's book, A Man and His Watch: How the Selection Worked. NASA reached out to multiple watch manufacturers and asked them to submit wrist-worn chronographs. Only 4 responded: Omega, Rolex, Longines, Wittnauer, and Hamilton. Hamilton was immediately disqualified because they sent a pocket watch instead. The remaining 3 were subjected to brutal testing: extreme temperatures, vacuum, shock, humidity, and vibration. Both the Rolex and the Longines Wittnauer failed during the environmental tests. Only the Omega Speedmaster survived every single one. What many people do not know is that before this official selection, astronaut Wally Schirra had already worn his personal Speedmaster into space during the Mercury program in 1962. He bought it himself. NASA had not yet chosen an official watch. Schirra just trusted his Speedmaster. It was the first time an Omega had ever been in space. But to give credit where it is due, a watch had already been in orbit more than a year earlier. The very first watch in space was a Poljot Sturmansky, worn by Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin during the first human spaceflight on April 12, 1961. It was a small military-grade watch originally designed for Soviet Air Force navigators. According to Gagarin's official report to the State Commission the following day, the watch functioned normally throughout the flight. The best demonstration of why astronauts needed a reliable watch came during Apollo 13 in April 1970. After an oxygen tank exploded, the crew lost most of their power systems, including the onboard digital timer. To correct their course for re-entry, they needed to fire the engine for exactly 14 seconds. The timing had to be extremely precise. Even small errors could have put the re-entry at serious risk. Jack Swigert timed the burn using a Speedmaster, the one belonging to Commander Jim Lovell, because it had been the most recently serviced. The burn was perfect. The crew splashed down safely. Later that year, Omega received NASA's Silver Snoopy Award for its contribution to human spaceflight. On July 20th, 1969, Buzz Aldrin had stepped onto the surface of the moon wearing his Speedmaster. It became the moonwatch forever. But just months later, something happened that would shake the entire industry. On Christmas Day 1969, the Japanese company Seiko unveiled the Astron, the world's first quartz wristwatch. Instead of springs and gears, it used a battery-powered crystal vibrating over 32,000 times per second. The accuracy was stunning, just a few seconds off per month, far beyond any mechanical watch. By the mid-1970s, cheap quartz watches flooded the market. Japanese companies like Seiko, Citizen, and Casio undercut the Swiss on both price and accuracy. The number of Swiss watch companies collapsed from roughly 1,600 to about 600. Jobs in the industry fell from 90,000 to under 30,000. This era became known as the Quartz Crisis, and it nearly destroyed Swiss watchmaking forever. One of the most dramatic stories from this period comes from the Zenith archives. In 1975, the American parent company Zenith Radio ordered the Swiss factory in Le Locle to stop making mechanical movements and destroy all the tooling. But head watchmaker Charles Vermont refused. He secretly labeled every die, cam, and press and hid them behind a false wall in the factory attic. A decade later, when interest in mechanical watches returned, Vermont's hidden stash allowed Zenith to restart production of their legendary El Primero chronograph. That movement would later be adapted by Rolex for use in early automatic Daytona models. One man's act of defiance helped save an entire industry's heritage. Meanwhile, the watch world was not just about technology. Watches were becoming cultural symbols, tied to the people who wore them and the stories they carried. In 1971, Steve McQueen starred in the racing film Le Mans wearing a blue Heuer Monaco on his wrist. The story behind that choice is fascinating. Joe Siffert, a Swiss racing driver who also ran a sports car dealership in Fribourg, supplied most of the Porsche and other racing cars used in the film. McQueen admired Siffert so much that he wanted to look like him on screen. Siffert gave McQueen one of his own racing suits, which had a prominent Heuer logo on the shoulder. To match, McQueen wore the blue Heuer Monaco. That single decision turned an obscure square chronograph into one of the most iconic watches in history. McQueen was far from the only celebrity whose name became inseparable from a watch. Elvis Presley owned a gold Coram Buckingham, which he gave to his bodyguard Richard Davis as a surprise gift. Elvis told Davis something was wrong with the watch. When Davis flipped it over to check, he found an engraving, "To Richard from EP." The whole thing had been an elaborate setup. And then there is the single most famous watch sale in history. Paul Newman was not just a Hollywood legend. He was a serious racing driver who competed for decades and even won the 24 Hours of Daytona at the age of 70. His wife, actress Joanne Woodward, worried about his safety on the track. So over the years, she gave him 3 Rolex Daytonas, each with an engraving on the case back. The first, a reference 6239 with an exotic dial, read, "Drive carefully, me." The second, a big red reference. 6263 for their 25th wedding anniversary said, "Drive slowly, Joanne." And the last one, a white gold Daytona from 2006, just 2 years before Newman passed away, read, "Drive very slowly, Joanne." Newman wore that first Daytona nearly every day for decades. The exotic dial style became so associated with him that collectors started calling any Daytona with that design a Paul Newman. Eventually, he casually gave the watch to his daughter's boyfriend. In 2017, that specific watch sold at auction for $17.75 million. At the time, it was the most expensive wristwatch ever sold. That record has since been broken by a Patek Philippe Grandmaster chime, which went for over $31 million in 2019. But Newman's Daytona remains the most famous watch sale of all time. The rescue of Swiss watchmaking came from 2 directions at once. Nicholas Hayek proposed something radical in 1983. Instead of fighting quartz, embraced it the Swiss way. The result was the Swatch, a cheap, colorful plastic watch that became a cultural phenomenon. Swatch profits funded the revival of traditional Swiss brands like Omega, Breguet, and Blancpain. That same year in Japan, Casio engineer Kikuo Ibe created the G-Shock after more than 200 failed prototypes. It could survive a 10-meter drop onto concrete. The sculptor Tom Sachs, featured in Hronek's book, has worn the same G-Shock model for 20 years. He loves the irony. His $40 Casio sits alongside his father's Patek Philippe, a watch that will one day be a family heirloom worth thousands. In 2015, Apple released the Apple Watch. Within months, it became the best-selling wearable device in the world. Many feared it would kill mechanical watches the same way quartz nearly did in the 1970s. But it did not. If anything, it reminded a new generation that wearing something on your wrist feels natural. And many of those people went on to discover mechanical watches for the first time. Today, the wristwatch exists in more forms than ever. A $15 Casio, a $50,000 Patek Philippe, passed from father to son. An Apple Watch that calls for help if you fall. Each one tells a different story, but they all share the same heritage. Ralph Lauren, who closes Hronek's book, captures this perfectly. He bought a gold cuff at an auction of Andy Warhol's belongings and attached his own Cartier Tank Sentry to it, creating something entirely unique. As he puts it, a watch is probably the most distinctive thing a man puts on every day. It is a functional jewel, and whether it costs $40 or $40,000, the story it tells is yours alone. The wristwatch is more than a tool or a piece of jewelry. It is a 200-year conversation between human ingenuity and the passage of time. And now I am curious about you. Do you own a watch with a story? Maybe it was your grandfather's. Maybe you saved up for months to buy it. Maybe someone gave it to you and you still remember exactly how it felt. Write it in the comments. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this video, a like really helps it reach more people who love these kinds of stories. And if you do not want to miss what comes next, hit subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.